Hi there. Take 10. I will be reading from Nightfall, the first volume in my serialized adventure horror epic, The Nightmareland Chronicles. I've selected a scene that should be easy to follow without any context. Think bad news blows into a small town bar. Alright. Forgive the poor video quality. I don't have a fancy camera. The night that John Hawthorne got up from his bar stool was one of many blowy nights in a long, listless November. They came rumbling up to the Trotter a few minutes before 9, 3 of them, their engines coughing in the rough way that always made Maria think of heavy smokers. She set down the mug she'd been polishing as headlights splashed in through the windows. Dismay rose inside her, like bile from an upset stomach. She had an idea who those headlights belonged to, and she wished, suddenly, desperately, that she had called in sick. As if that were an option. As if there were anyone to call in to, except for herself. Will they turn them blasted things off? Carl Mackenzie yelled, shielding his eyes from one of the booths in the back. He was busy tucking himself into a bottle, or he had been, until Maria cut him off an hour ago. Let Carl pull the covers up high enough, and he'd make a bed out of the booth's rubbery red cushions. Then nothing would wake him up, short of the jingle from Andy's handcuffs. But Andy was gone now, a fact that Maria was still getting used to, that she could not quite make sit right inside her head. She glanced down the bar to where John Hawthorne sat in a dark blue denim jacket, sipping on his water. The headlight shined right on him, so bright he might have been in a photo studio, but he didn't appear to notice. His gaze stayed fixed on something beyond the liquor bottle stacked against the Trotter's log wall. He'd been coming in as long as Maria had worked here, which was longer than she liked to reflect on, and not once could she remember him having missed a night. Not once. He'd walk in at 8 and walk out by 9, a $5 bill tucked beneath his empty water glass. One glass was all he ever had, and he nursed it like it was the bitterest stuff on the shelf, like sipping on it hurt. And maybe it did. Maria had observed a great many drinkers over the years, but she'd never seen someone want a drink as badly as John Hawthorne. She'd asked Andy about him once, on a slow evening much like this one. What I know of John is he minds his own business, Andy had told her, and there's no reason to worry over a man who minds his own business. The implication there, unspoken but clear, was that if John stopped minding his own business, there would be reason to worry. The bikes shut off. The bar dimmed. "Hallelujah," said Carl. "If you say so," Maria said under her breath, trying not to look at the front door. Her voice must not have been quite as steady as she thought it was, because for a brief moment John seemed to notice her. He didn't turn his head or move his eyes, but a change came about him, an awareness that hadn't been there before. It was gone so quickly, Maria wondered if she had imagined it. They came in, the Lot brothers, so called not because they were related by blood, but because they dressed alike and talked alike and rode the same vintage Harleys. Bill entered first, his sleeves rolled up to display the tattooed hogs he had for arms. A great believer in working out his glamour muscles was Bill. Next was Pete, working hard at his head with a fine-toothed comb. He had nice hair, thick and luxurious, and it almost made up for his face. If it had just been these two, Maria would have been thrilled. But all turds lead back to an asshole, and this particular asshole went by the name of Rick Lott. He booted his way in as the door swung shut behind his stooges, his hands too lazy to unhook themselves from his belt. Some skulls were not meant to be bald, and Rick's was one of them. His noggin was a mole-spotted, rugged landscape, divided by a twisting riverbed of scar tissue. He'd gotten that scar in prison, supposedly, where he'd done time for aggravated assault in a roadside bar just like this one. He never smiled. His mouth didn't know how to. But his eyes contained a certain canny cheerfulness, a fool's gold kind of sparkle. He scanned the room as he strolled in, pausing briefly on John before passing on to Maria. "Well, hello," he said, as if he had not expected to find her here, exactly where she always was. "Hello, Rick," she said. "You're out early tonight." "Me and the boys were feeling antsy this evening. A crisp winter day like today, it just gets in your bones. Makes an itch you've just got to scratch, you know? This is San Bernardino, Rick. We don't get winter." He laughed a harsh, barking laugh and dragged out a bar stool to sit next to his brothers. They were quiet. They knew better than to take the floor when Rick was speaking. "Oh, Maria, lovely Maria, how I missed you in that mouth. It's been far too long." Not by her count, it hadn't. "What are you drinking?" "That depends," he said, rubbing his sandpapered cheeks. "You don't happen to fit in a pint, do you?" Maria pretended not to hear him. With one hand, she lined 3 beers beneath the tap and started to pour. With her other hand, she reached under the rack, out of sight, so that she could send Andy a message on her phone. He would stop by and see the lots long after a drink or two, as he had done before on many occasions, and then all would be right again, at least until they came back. That was the problem with guys like Rick. They always came back. She got as far as "you'd better come over" before she remembered. The phone suddenly seemed much heavier. She set it down and looked up to find Rick watching her, one of his eyebrows cocked in a curious, considering way. "How's our dear sheriff these days?" Spider legs walked Maria's spine. Smart Rick might not have been, but stupid he was not. "Just fine," she said. If he hadn't heard the news, she certainly wasn't about to inform him. "You know Andy?" I surely do. And you know something else?" His voice dropped, taking on a conspiratorial tone. "I think he might have a thing for me. Whenever I wander around this way, I can always count on him stepping through the door a little while later. It's like the old boy just can't get enough of my company. Ain't that right, fellas?" Bill nodded vigorously. Pete only sucked on his beer. He seemed determined to hide behind his glass. Not that Maria could blame him. Good Lord, wasn't acne supposed to settle down after puberty? A loud, bouncing crash rang across the room. Maria looked over to see Carl's end of the line drink, H2O and enough lemon juice to make the soul pucker, water falling over the edge of his table. The noise turned every head in the bar, except John's. He merely sat there, his glass clasped loosely in one hand. Maria couldn't help but notice that the glass was now almost empty. And when the last of it was gone, he'd be gone too. A $5 bill for a goodbye. She gathered up a few dry rags to clean the spill, but did not step out from behind the bar. Back here, there was at least something between herself and the lots. And maybe the safety was an illusion, but it was all that she had now that she didn't have Andy. Except, she realized, that wasn't entirely true. She had something else on her side. It was a small thing, but maybe it was enough. It didn't matter that Andy was out of the picture. What mattered was what Rick believed. And Rick believed Andy was still around, which meant Rick would be on his best behavior. She hoped. Armed with that thought, Maria struck out into open waters. The lots twisted around on their bar stools to stare at her, taking her in, bite by bite. At last she reached the table, where Carl was trying to scoop water back into the glass with his palms. "I'm sorry, Maria," he said. "I'm so sorry. It's just a little spill, Carl. Cool your jets. She shooed his hands away and gave the table a once-over with the rags. Then she dropped them on the floor to mop up the rest with her feet. No way was she bending over for her current audience. "What's wrong?" Carl asked, his whiskered face lined with concern. "You look upset." "Nothing's wrong. Just relax." He swallowed. "Is it the drought?" "It's the drought, isn't it? Here I am wasting water when there are kids out there dying of thirst." She might have laughed if Carl's dismay hadn't been so genuine. That's how it was with him when he got drunk. Nothing in the world was safe from his guilt. Which is why he got drunk in the first place, to break his own heart. In a way, Carl wasn't so different from John Hawthorne, who also came here to punish himself. "Nobody's dying of thirst," she said. "Not because of you." Carl didn't hear her. He'd gotten what he needed, what he felt he deserved. He climbed up from the booth, slipping a little on the damp floorboards, and headed for the door. As she watched him go, a thought came to her, one that set her skin tingling. She could leave. No farewells, no explanations. She could just leave and let the boys help themselves to whatever they liked on the shelves. Who cared? She never wanted to run this hole in the first place. It just happened. The slow, insidious way it always happens. You tell yourself it's only for a little while. This job, this house, this town. You say, "I only have to pay off my loans, save up some money, then I'll hit the highway like it's bad and needs spanking." But you get comfortable. Your routine learns the shape of you, becomes as snug and cozy as a glove. You don't even notice it's smothering you because it feels so good. There's your television, 60 inches of sexy plasma. There's your Netflix, always ready to welcome you with some warm sitcom laughter. And your stack of Blu-rays and your bookcases full of well-worn paperbacks. There's Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram to keep you connected, to show you all the places you've yet to visit and people you've yet to meet. You've got 1,000 worlds at your fingertips, 1,000 lives, and before you know it, home is just the place you go to be somewhere else, someone else, until morning comes and your dreams end and you have to be you again. Go. Leave. Go. But suppose the lots didn't stick around to cash in on a free drink. Suppose they followed her outside, into the wind and the dark. That was their territory. At least in here she was on her own grounds. Maria scooped up the rags, careful to leave her hips out of it, and returned to the bar on spring-loaded legs. As she passed, Rick clicked his tongue on the roof of his mouth. The sound was like a door closing, like a key turning inside a lock. "You sure cleaned up that spill over there. I might have to lose this beer to my lap, just so you can come around and wipe me off." "Be nice, Rick," Pete said. "I am being nice. I was paying the lady a compliment." Maybe she didn't take it that way. You ever think of that? Maybe you hurt her feelings. In the mirror between the liquor shelves, she watched as Rick drummed the bar top with scabbed knuckles. "You're being silly. A girl like Maria doesn't get her feelings hurt over a compliment. If she took it as a compliment, don't you think she would have thanked you?" "Well, damn, Pete, you've got a point. Maybe she didn't hear. Maybe." "Maria," Rick said, "did you hear that nice little thing I said about you a moment ago?" She turned around, a touch too fast for her own good. The room gave a slight bumping jerk as it settled into place. "I heard, Rick." "Then why didn't you say thank you?" Those eyes, that false, cheerful sparkle. She swallowed the fish hook in her throat and said, "Guess I forgot." "That's okay. I know how you can make it up to me." Rick polished off the last of his beer and wagged the empty pint at her. She took down a fresh one. He tisked. "You're about 2 short by my count. Me and my boys, we don't do anything we can't do together. We like to share. We like to share. The fishhook, now in her guts, sunk itself in deep. She took down another pair of glasses, then filled all three and carried them over one at a time. As she set Rick's down in front of him, his fingers sprang open and clasped around her wrist. The feel of his skin was warm and soft, like cheese left out in the sun. "You know what's special about today?" he asked. She tugged, but he only pulled her closer. "Today is Sunday, and on Sundays I read the paper. I do it for the funnies, you see. Sunday has the best funnies. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Rick, that isn't special at all. Everybody likes the funnies. But I don't just read the big paper. I read the little papers, too. I get the one from Big Pines, where us three live, delivered right to the door. I even get the one you got here in Wrightwood. That's my favorite." Maria listened numbly, her body encased in slow-moving ice. "But it got no laughs out of me this morning," Rick continued with sadness in his voice and a smile in his eyes. "What I saw on the front page was just about broke my heart. I sat down on my stoop and I thought to myself, I'd better go see Maria tonight and make sure she's holding up okay. She won't want to be alone right now." He gave a slow, solemn shake of his head, letting go of her wrist. "Poor old Andy. He must have been so well loved around here." Maria straightened. It was a difficult thing to do. Gravity seemed to be working twice as hard on her, except for her feet. Those felt light, balloon feet. She drifted down the bar away from the Lot brothers and picked up her polishing rag. The wine flutes were dusty, which was no surprise. She hadn't popped a bottle of champagne since New Year's. She reached for one but bumped it with her finger instead. It walked off the shelf and shattered on the floor. "Be careful," Pete said. "Don't tell her to be careful," Rick said. "It's okay, Maria. Accidents happen. You've got nothing to feel bad about." She got down on her knees to sweep the shards into the brake bucket. The largest piece, the stem, was nowhere to be seen. It must have rolled off somewhere. She'd find it later, hopefully not by stepping on it. That was a thing that happened sometimes to bartenders. They'd be walking along, putting on a show, only to develop a sudden and incurable case of champagne stem through the foot. Maria let out a nervous titter and began to feel a little better, a little smoother, as if she'd had wrinkles in her head and laughing at iron in her mouth. She took a deep breath as she rose back to her feet. "Nothing's going to happen. They're just playing games, trying to freak me out. Nothing's going to..." John's glass, his water glass. It was empty. She stared at the $5 bill tucked beneath it, knowing what that bill meant. He was leaving. He had finished his ritual. In another minute he would be gone, and she would be alone. Just her and them. 3 good old boys who did everything together, who liked to share. With some difficulty, she looked up at John. He was looking back. His eyes, green-tinged gray, regarded her as if from a great distance. "Would you like a refill, Mr. Hawthorne?" He must have heard the plea in her voice. He must have. "No," he said, and the trap door opened beneath Maria. She was falling, wind in her ears falling, when he said, "I think something stronger is in order tonight." It took her a while to remember how to speak. "What? You'll what?" "Dim beam," he told her, "and you'd better make it a double." "Are you're sure?" He nodded slightly. She selected a big shot glass, filled it to the top, and slid it to him with a hand that felt as if it might start shaking at any moment. Then she watched, waiting for him to pick it up, still not quite believing he had ordered it in the first place. For years he had been coming to sip on his water, in at 8, out by 9, as regular as clockwork. For years. And now, on this windy night in the middle of November, it was 3 minutes past 9 and he was sitting here with a whiskey. The realization was enough to make Maria forget all about the men at the other end of the bar, if only for a second. When John did not take the shot, when he instead got up slowly from his stool and walked toward the brothers, carrying the glass with him, her surprise had no more room left to grow. She could only stand back and stare. "What's this?" Rick said as John placed the drink in front of him. "You need me to explain it? You confused?" A hush fell over the trotter. Pete's shoulders took on a hunch, while Bill's muscles tightened, making his small shirt seem that much smaller. Rick simply gazed up at John with his head cocked and an expression of mild amusement on his face. He appeared to be enjoying this, whatever this was. At last he shrugged. "You never turned down a free drink, that's what I say." He booted the shot and slammed the glass down with a bang. "Woo! That's good shit. Cheap shit, don't get me wrong, but only the cheap shit packs enough heat to burn twice. Wait. Woo! There it is again." "Here," John said. "Let me pour you another." He reached out and caught Rick's nose between his thumb and forefinger. Then he twisted, hard. The sound of breaking bone and cartilage was like rock salt grinding beneath someone's teeth, like gravel crunching underneath the Harley's tires. Rick might have had time to move at this point, but he chose instead to scream. John grabbed him by the back of the neck and shoved his face, which had been tapped like a cake, down over the shot glass. As the glass filled with Rick's blood, his feet performed a frantic, skittering tap dance against the bar's wooden side. Thump, 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 thump. His brothers, meanwhile, had forgotten they had feet in the first place. They watched, frozen from their seats. When the glass was full again, John let go. "My fucking fuck!" Rick shouted, rocking backward on his stool and cupping the ugly mound that had been his nose. "You son of a bitch! You fucking..." He started to rise. Stopped. Something passed between the two men. It was as if the trotter's front door had opened and the wind had let itself into the bar. Rick Lott looked up at John Hawthorne from his bar stool, and whatever he saw looking back made him sit down again. That was the end of it, Maria understood later. The rest was decided in that moment. "Thought you never turned down a free drink," said John. Rick's eyes, tear-glazed and lacking all trace of their former sparkle, shifted to the shot glass. It brimmed in front of him, a rich, warm, quivering red. He swallowed, reached for it. His hand, Maria noticed with a tickle of pleasure, trembled as he raised the dripping rim to his lips. "Drink," she thought. "Drink, you fucker. Drink, 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 drink." Then he did. All of it. He set the glass down, gagged into his palm, got up, gagged a second time, and headed for the door. His boys made to leave too. John stopped them both with a shake of his head. "The first shot was on me. The second was on the house. But the beers are on you." "I only got a 20, Bill said, the only words he spoke all evening. "20 is fine," said John. "Right, Maria?" Maria, unable to speak, nodded. Within moments, the three of them were gone, as their bikes rumbled awake and swept off down the road. John turned to look at Maria over the bar. His arms were slack. The lamp hanging over him did nothing to soften the sharp lines of his face. He watched her for what seemed a long time. "I'm John," he said finally. "I know. May I pour you something to drink?" "Yes," he said. Water would be nice. Between them, on the bar, blood trickled and collected darkly at the bottom of the shot glass. All right. Thank you for listening. That's the book again. I hope you have a nice whatever day you're listening to this.